Hello, I'm Reverend Elder Cecilia Eggleston, and on this Pentecost Sunday, I'd just like to share a short reflection with you. What an extraordinary day that must have been, don't you think? People gathered from so many different places in Jerusalem to celebrate the Jewish feast of Pentecost. And there are the disciples too, gathered together in a room early in the morning, and all sorts of things start to happen. An assault on the senses. There is the sound of a roaring wind. Then there seems to be something like tongues of fire that came to rest on each one of them. And then something happening to their mouths, their throats, their tongues, as they perhaps were beginning to speak in another language, or at least other people. Something was happening to their ears that they could hear, the language of their own place. The author of the book of Acts mentions 16 different places that people have come from. How is it that we hear each of us in our own native language? Isn't that extraordinary? Parthians, Medes, Elamites, and residents of Mesopotamia, Judea and Cappadocia, Pontus and Asia, Phrygia and Pamphylia, Egypt and the parts of Libya belonging to Cyrene, and visitors from Rome, both Jews and proselytes, Cretans and Arabs. In our own languages, we hear them speaking about the God's deeds of power. How extraordinary. Each one hearing their own native language. And how must that have impacted them? Just think for a minute of some place that you went to for the first time. Perhaps it was coming into a Metropolitan community church. Perhaps it was starting a new job. Perhaps going into a new community. But was there something that started to speak your language that connected with you? You know, in England, we actually have a couple of phrases like that. When we're talking to someone, you say, "Oh, now you're speaking my language," or "now you're talking." And of course, we've been talking and speaking English all the time, but it's what we're saying and how we're saying it. So was it music that touched you? The words of a song or a hymn? Prayers or poetry? The beauty of creativity or creation? Something that spoke your language, that started to speak to you of God's power and God's love, inclusive love for you. The disciples, that must have been quite a scary experience, but perhaps also quite exhilarating if they were filled with the power of the Holy Spirit. And they could see what was happening. And because they were willing to keep going with it rather than bottle it up, and Peter was willing to go out and explain to the crowds about Jesus, we read that so many people said, "We want to know more about this. We want to know more about God and about the life of Jesus and about the power of the Holy Spirit." And we read that so many were added to the community over that day and the coming days. So on this Pentecost day, let us think about that. Let's think about the ways that we are willing to learn new ways of communicating, new languages, so that we too can reach out, perhaps beyond the community that we feel comfortable serving, to see where else the Holy Spirit is calling us to serve. You know, I love going on retreat, and if I go to a new retreat house and it has a bookshop, I always go and look and see if it has any progressive theology books, whether it has any books by LGBTQI+ theologians. I want that retreat centre to speak my language, and that's one way of checking out whether they do or not. So when you think back of what made you welcome, What are the different ways that we can make other people welcome? We can learn new languages so that we too can reach out and speak with more people about God's inclusive love for them. Our churches in Brazil are currently working on a social media project, and so they are learning or getting even better at the languages of meme and TikTok videos and WhatsApp groups, Instagram posts. Reverend Elder Hector Gutierrez and Elder Velma Garcia are working with congregations in the USA that want to start or grow a Latinx ministry, because many of our churches recognize the congregation, the communities that they serve are changing, and they want to be able to reach everybody in those communities. So what are the different languages that we can learn, the different ways we can communicate, the different ways that we can reach out beyond the language we're comfortable with to offer more people that special welcome and safe, sacred space that MCC offers? When I was a local church pastor, like many pastors, I celebrated many marriages. It's a wonderful part of ministry. And often the guests arrived very early. And there was a young family at the back of the church, and I walked down to say hello. And the mother got very flustered, and she was giving the little boy, the toddler, some crisps. He said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I know I shouldn't be giving him that food in church, but he'll get tired and he'll get grumpy if I don't give him something to eat." And I said, "No, it's just absolutely fine. What I wanted to tell you is over there's a children's corner. It's got toys and puzzles and crayons and paper. And so you are very welcome here, and you're very welcome to go and use that corner." It was a way of speaking a language that that young mother could understand. So on this Pentecost Sunday, notice the languages that are speaking to you: music, creativity, kindness. What is it that we also need to trust the Holy Spirit for reaching out and learning a new language? Because we are all called to reach someone. We all have a way of connecting with someone and speaking to them in a way that perhaps only we and they can understand. And that's part of the movement of the Holy Spirit. I wish you every blessing this Pentecost as you celebrate the power of the Holy Spirit within each one of you, within your community, within our whole denomination worldwide. And I pray for you as you continue to serve others, telling them about the amazing, inclusive love of God for all. It takes all of us to be MCC. God bless.